It's a well-known fact that it only takes about 6.5 seconds after you've made up your first garment that you realize sewing pattern sizes are not what you expect. I think there's 3 different levels that we go through in our understanding and how we use sewing patterns and how we best choose our size and use it. And of course, let's talk about that in this video so you can skip through these levels and actually just get to the point where you start making clothes that fit. Let's just talk about what is up with sewing pattern sizes. My dear sewing friends, it is time. If you're just brand new here, welcome. My name's Evelyn Wood and I'm the creator of VintageSewingSchool.com. And through my years of teaching, through my own sewing experience, I can boil it down to maybe 3 different levels that we go through in using sewing patterns and how we look at using the size and choosing our size, because it makes a huge difference. It's about the perspective that we have. I think we come in with a view, and we'll get to that, the 3 different points, of course. When our view changes, we can actually start using these and making clothes that fit. This came from a quote from one of my members from Vintage Sewing School who has made it to level 3 rather quickly, thanks to Vintage Sewing School, and sent me a message to just, well, I'll tell you that quote later, but is ecstatic nonetheless. So what are these 3 different levels? But quickly, just some fine print for anyone, don't get too excited. As you go through these different levels, the 3rd one is where you just spend the whole rest of your sewing journey in, because it's never ending. Like, there's no end to the levels. You continually learn from there. But let's get to number 1 first. And the first thing that we realize when we pick up sewing patterns is that the sewing pattern sizes are not the same as ready-to-wear sizes. So they're completely different from the sizings that we choose, like the number in a store when we go in and pick a garment off the rack. That sizing is completely different to these sizings. They have nothing to do with each other. I mean, I learned this the hard way because they don't even list Australian sizes on here. That's where I am in Australia. So imagine how confusing that is. It's just a number, but we'll get to that in a little bit. And hopefully you haven't already made up a garment and just picked I usually wear a size 12, so I'm going to make that up. Most of us do, unfortunately, to begin with, but no. So now that you are a genuine sewist of the world, the first rule is that these numbers mean nothing and that we always use our measurements. We need to measure ourselves. We do not go off whatever number is on our clothing in the garments that we buy, because that means nothing at all. That no longer has any relevance to you whatsoever. We will only measure ourselves and use the measuring charts here to figure out what size we need. And of course, I know you're often in between sizes and everything, and we'll get to that a little bit later. Once we've figured out this one, which only takes, as I said, about 6.5 seconds to realize that step, the next sort of level that we unlock is we realize that there's a difference between body measurements and finished garment measurements, because lo and behold, we've made up the garment to what it tells us we should have. You've measured your body and it tells you to make up a size 12, let's say. You put it on and it looks like 2 sizes too big. What's up with that? This is where body measurements and garment measurements come into play, and I've made other videos about this before and about ease as well, because basically the difference between what our body is and what our garment is, which is always different, is called ease. So reference my other videos. I'll link them down below for you to go further detail into those. But this is the kind of level that we get to rather quickly, and it's good because then you can really start choosing the size that you want. Now, the patterns do list the ease sometimes and finished garment measurements sometimes. You can learn to measure it yourself and figure out what it is so you can better choose your best size from there, because you want to know you can decide how big you want the garment to be on you, right? That's the whole point, and that's the next, I think, in our sewing journey that we delve into, is deciding for ourselves how much ease we want on garments and better measuring. First of all, using what the pattern tells us for finished garment measurements, and then measuring it yourself, because they don't often tell you. So FYI, if you are interested, yes, I have all the tutorials and lessons of how to do all of these things in Vintage Sewing School. That's where all that stuff is. I would love to have you in class if you're ready to take your sewing to that next level. I'll put links down below for that. Then once you start covering this off and you're getting pretty good, but the next level that you get to in learning how to fit and sew and use sewing pattern sizes is that you realize, and this is the big one, you realize that the sewing pattern size is just a starting point, and then you're meant to make alterations from there. What do I mean by this? So obviously we know we're all different shapes and sizes than just whatever is here. But think about this. When you go to even just a single store, say you go to, I don't know, some store, and you pick out, no, you don't even pick out, you have your number, right? Let's say I'm usually a size 12, and so I walk into the store, and imagine if I just picked a size 12 of every single garment in the store, or randomly just anything. How many of those garments do you think that you would have to try on and put to the side before you found one that actually fit you right? Even though they all have the same number, they're all from the same brand even, you get what I mean, right? Not all garments are made the same, they all fit differently, so why should we expect that a sewing pattern in that size is just going to fit us just because we made it ourselves? I know, it's one of the things I remember realizing, of course, obviously. And so that's when the next level, and where we spend all of our time henceforth, is using our sewing patterns like size here as just a starting point, because then you will blend two sizes together. Say for example myself, I would always have to blend in a smaller size at the waist and blend to a bigger size at the hips because that's my shape. You might have to make alterations like everybody does. A full bust adjustment, a small bust adjustment, maybe a sway back, lengthening and shortening. The sewing pattern size is just the starting point. And this is where the quote that I was going to tell you about that sparked this whole idea is from one of my members emailed me telling me, and she's like, thank you so much, because now I realize, like bang, like light bulb moment, that the sewing pattern size is just a starting point and I'm meant to make changes from there. Now that I have this perspective, I know what I'm supposed to do to work on getting this pattern to fit, and her expectations have changed. Now she's getting the results that she wants and wanted to thank me. So that really meant a lot to me, and it sparked this idea because I know we go through sometimes funny the different ways that we look at patterns. First you pick your size and you think I'm a 12 and you make it up, wow, that was wrong. Then you realize the body garment measurements, finished garment measurements, and you think, that's great, I got this. But then you use it and you think, I think there's another bit here. That's only a starting point. The whole world of fitting is after that, from there, and using the sizes as a starting point. And of course, that's where learning to sew is actually learning two skills. It's learning sewing at your sewing machine, and then it's learning to adjust patterns and fit. It's actually two skills. I know no one told you that yet. Hopefully, if I'm the first person to tell you that, well, that is just garment sewing, but it is a fun journey. And the sooner that you, I think, have this perspective in mind, I know it helped me, you can see the way that you forward, right? You can see how you're supposed to use these sewing patterns, and then we'll get better results really quickly because you're using them in the right way with the right perspective and right expectations of our sewing patterns. I'd love to hear your experience. Which level have you just maybe got yourself into and are working on at the moment? You can skip through those and get to the end hopefully rather quickly now. I'd love to hear below where you're at. What are you doing with your sewing pattern sizes? Because I might just make further videos about those different things. If you have ideas, leave those in the comments down below as well. Okay, my friends, until next time, happy sewing and happy better choosing a pattern size. Bye.